Welcome all to the Samsung Solve for Tomorrow competition presentation. Before I introduce our presenters today, Ruth is going to open this webinar with a karakia.
Ka pai, me karakia tātou. Tīkina atu I tua whakarere, I te ao kōhatu, ngā mōhiotanga o rātou mā. Hei kawe I a tātou I roto I te ao tūroa. Kua takotoke te whāriki I rarangahia e rātou, wānangahia, tuakina kia tau, rangahaua kia maumahara, manakohia kia whiwhi ai, te mātauranga Māori motuhake. Haumie, huie, tai kie.
Ngā mihi, Ruth. So the Samsung Solve for Tomorrow competition. I'm going to introduce our presenters here. We have Sarah. Give us a wave, Sarah. With over 20 years of teaching technology in the UK and New Zealand, Sarah holds a BA of Honours in Industrial Design and Technology. She has led teams and facilitated STEM and Technology PLD, contributing to projects like MoE Resource Development and TENS Mātanga. In 2020, she became New Zealand's first technology teacher to win the Prime Minister's Science Teacher Prize. Currently, Sarah develops educational resources for Byte Ed and lectures in technology education at the University of Waikato. In her spare time, she volunteers as Deputy Chair for TENS and spends an incredible amount of time with the development of educational resources for technology education. Ruth, give us a wave, Ruth. Ruth is a leading researcher in Indigenous technology education, focusing on Hangaro. Recently completing her PhD, she has documented Hangaro curriculum development and is widely published. With 2 decades of teaching experience across Māori medium, English medium, and international contexts, Ruth is somewhat of a curriculum connoisseur and deeply knowledgeable in the New Zealand curriculum and te marotanga or Aotearoa. Ruth is committed to creating resources that support deep student engagement with critical concepts. Ruth is new to the competition this year and will be focusing on the development of materials aligned with te marotanga or Aotearoa. Julie, give us a wave. Julie began her career in mechanical engineering with DSIR, working on major projects like the Auckland Harbour Bridge. Transitioning to education, she taught physics and science before helping introduce New Zealand's technology curriculum. Julie has lectured at the University of Auckland, managed educational roles, and worked with Apple NZ. Julie joined MOTAT in 2015 and has since headed the education team, overseeing the introduction of new services, including STEAM cells, online workshops, and learnables. Julie sees her role at MOTAT as the perfect environment to bring her technical education and management skills together to effect positive change for students aspiring to work in New Zealand's burgeoning innovation landscape. So, with all of that, I'm going to hand it over to these 3 amazing presenters to share with us all about Samsung Solve for Tomorrow competition.
Thanks.
That was a big one, eh?
I actually don't know how to follow that. That was like phenomenal. Welcome to this introductory webinar today for the Samsung Solve for Tomorrow competition. Ngā hua mō Apopo. So what we have here is we have our first webinar for the competition. We are really honoured to be part of the delivery of this information today. As you can see, the competition itself is run and organised by Samsung and Acumen in New Zealand, but we help and support. So it's in partnership with MOTAT, and that's Julie, and those of us on TENS. So we volunteer our time to effectively help different students and educators from across New Zealand. I don't have to introduce 3 of us now, so we're going to move along. And Ruth, would you like to introduce our what we're moving on to today, please?
Hi, I will just share a note because this wasn't on the screen while I was sharing the karakia, that these are the opening words for the Hangaro curriculum, and so they embody the essence of Hangaro practice. All right, so what we're covering today, we'll be covering kotiaha, māwai, āhia, he pēhia, right? So what, who for, when, and all of the big questions, right? How can we enter? What are the resources on the Samsung Solve for Tomorrow website? And obviously finishing off with some questions. We would love to hear what you need to know to be able to get ready for the competition. So do use that Q&A function and upvote questions.
Hello everyone, I'm going to start with a little bit of the history of the Samsung Solve for Tomorrow competition, and to give you a bit of a insight into what it is and what your students might be involved in doing if they decide to enter for this year, which we hope they do. So Samsung Solve for Tomorrow is a program that began in the US in 2010 and has since awarded more than $27 million in technology and classroom supplies to more than 4,000 US schools. It is now present in 64 countries and it reaches over 2.3 million students worldwide. In 2017, Samsung approached MOTAT because they wanted to partner with us to bring the competition into New Zealand. And so we worked with them to bring it into New Zealand. We got interrupted a little bit by COVID in 2019, 2020, but the first iteration of the competition was in 2021 here. We got TENS very quickly on board in the following year, and since then the three organisations have been working together to both administer and distribute and raise the profile of the competition with for New Zealand students. In 2024, we extended the competition for high school students, and what that allowed us to do was for TENS and MOTAT to get together to develop a new assessment tool, which reflected the NCEA level 2 and 3 achievement standards. And we were just aiming to make it that if you're teaching at that level, you're not doing additional work, or your students are not doing additional work, for them to be able to enter their work into this competition and put themselves in line for some fairly significant prizes. What is the Samsung Solve for Tomorrow competition? What it does is it asks students to identify a problem and to use STEM to improve their communities. And that should sound very familiar to most of us who are familiar with the technology education curriculum, because it's what you do in technology education. So we get students, or we ask our students to follow a design thinking process, work with stakeholders, develop their concept, build and test their prototypes, and to evaluate their outcomes. What's on the screen there was a generic design thinking process, which you're probably all reasonably familiar with. Sorry, next slide now, Ruth. This video before Ruth hits play is created, or was created, for the 10th anniversary of the competition in the United States. Now, I'm not a big fan of the United States or anything in particular. I just wanted to show you this because it provides an interesting overview in a fairly short, sharp format of the types of problems that students have chosen to work with in this competition. Hit play, please.
We conclude that our local community will benefit tremendously if we install a green roof on our school.
A green roof would help absorb stormwater runoff.
I lost 3 of my friends. They were run over by cars. I had an idea to build this app that would detect cars and alert you. Elk collisions are a real problem, and this is a real solution. This really isn't something that happens just in our community. It's all over the nation. So we can be saving lives all over the nation and maybe someday globally.
We presented our project HeadSafe. It is a concussion sensing sensor that can be implemented into any sports helmet. Concussion can have lasting effects, but we're really trying to focus on the concussion that you don't see so that all players are safe.
Our sign utilizes an app we designed which uses GPS to determine the coordinates of the bus. If the bus is within 200 feet, the lights will strobe yellow, and when the bus gets within 30 feet, the lights will glow red.
Thank you, Ruth. So an overview of some of the projects that come out of the US, and you can see from that video just the breadth of them, what the interesting range of problems that students have identified, which are very local to their communities and their environments, and how they have created some prototype solutions for them. On the next slide, I wanted to include some New Zealand entries. We have had this competition in New Zealand since 2021, so we've now got a reasonable amount of entries that we can showcase from New Zealand context. So this first one is Harrison Maxwell, and his project was called Beautify the Berms. He wanted to address the issue of roadside berms, the fact that there was a lot of maintenance required in keeping them mown, and that there was an opportunity cost associated with unutilized land which could have been put to better use and solved things like the declining bee population. His entry was notable for his engagement with stakeholders, and I've just put this screenshot up because it says here he created a survey and his mum put it on Facebook, and what a fabulous way of getting a problem out there in front of a whole bunch of people and getting a whole lot of survey responses. And he got 950 survey responses, and he was also engaging with horticultural experts all online, so it wasn't as though he was kind of pounding the streets, knocking on people's doors. He had really great stakeholder engagement through the wonderful internet that we've got available to us. Next slide. This was 2022, and a team from Howick College created a non-invasive diabetes device. And this was prompted by the problem of measuring your blood sugar levels through the common finger prick test, which obviously is a bit painful. This student, or the students in this team, wanted to develop an alternative device which was going to not be painful for users. And as you can see, they've developed this breathalyzer type mechanism which you blow into, and it measures the ketones in your breath and translates them into blood sugar levels. The notable feature of this project was that they engaged with Diabetes New Zealand, and that organisation got on board 40 diabetics who were asked to use this device alongside their normal BLG testing process, and that allowed the team to compare their results with the standard test results and to do some correlation for accuracy. Their device proved to be quite accurate. Next slide. This was 2023, Cameron Moore. His project was called Wallaby Capture. He utilised AI and taught himself how to program for AI and how to use AI software to recognise wallabies, and he paired that with a good nature trap, which is a humane trap for wildlife. So what happens is the device recognises the wallaby when it's near the trap and activates the trap. This was coming out of a problem that they were experiencing or are experiencing in Aotearoa, where there's a burgeoning population of wallabies that need to be kept in control. He won first prize for his entry, and it attracted the media, quite a lot of media coverage at the time, and that resulted in a company called Red Stag getting on board because they wanted to support his future developments of his prototype. Next slide, Ruth. This one was from 2024, last year. This was Gabriel Anthony. He developed the Pillbot which you can see there. He was inspired by his granny, who was struggling, visually impaired, and struggling to accurately identify her pills. So his project used AI, again, a bit of a common theme there, and that is programmed to visually assist visually impaired people to able accurately identify their pills. So you can see at the bottom of that slide, there's a little kind of hollow in the bottom of the mechanism, and you put in the pill in there, and it reads the pill, and it then verbalizes on your phone what the pill is and helps you to identify that you're taking the right pill that you're expecting to take. Again, a great notable feature about his project was his stakeholder engagement. He contacted 440 pharmacists and had 64 of them actively responding to his testing and evaluation. So he had this wonderful kind of stakeholder engagement going on with lots of pharmacists giving him valuable advice. For example, one thing that came out of it was that pills quite often change their appearance depending on who the supplier is that's contracted by the Ministry of Health to bring that particular pill into the country. So what might be a blue pill one year, the next year might turn out to be a red capsule or something like that. And so the PillBot being able to recognize in their database that there are different forms for the same pill was a future improvement that was needed to be made to that particular prototype. I'm going to hand over to Sarah now, who's going to talk a little bit more about the New Zealand curriculum and STEM links.
Oh, thanks, Julie. So we've tried really hard in the background to try and make sure that the Solve for Tomorrow competition can fully support all different STEM subjects that we teach in our schools across Aotearoa. They are usually, as you can tell from some of those examples there, cross-curricular projects. So they do integrate and weave in many different aspects, particularly of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And not all the projects that you'll see that we showcase have digital technologies involved. We have lots and lots of entries that are going into different kinds of materials or going really having a heavy focus on exploration and experimentation of materials, for example, so that they can actually hook in to an authentic context too. So we do try and encourage as much as possible that transference of skills and knowledge. Another way, particularly at the moment, is obviously there's a large focus on literacy and numeracy that we have here in New Zealand. And with the submissions that the students have to prepare for the judges to be able to understand what has been happening, they actually need to showcase their literacy and numeracy skills. So some great connections here for us as teachers to interweave different subjects into the projects too that they're creating. So the rubrics, which we will showcase to you in a moment, go back, thank you. They connect directly to the New Zealand curriculum, in particular the technology strands in the curriculum as well. So what we do have is we have gone through the rubrics and made sure the criteria follow the design thinking process that we highlighted earlier. And not only have we done that, as Julie mentioned, with the recent changes to NCEA, especially with level 1, and obviously still considering the opportunities there for level 2 and level 3, we have ensured that the latest rubric for the older category of students does actually connect really well to the different criteria that are required for different NCEA standards. And obviously we've looked at, from a level 1, we have looked and explored and utilised the standard criteria for DVC, for materials and processing, and for digital technologies. And we were aware of those whilst we were developing the rubrics too. So hopefully what this means is, as teachers, you won't be expected to create anything new or teach anything extra as such, because this is what you should be doing or will be doing in the classroom with your students anyway. And they can submit their portfolios that they create for their design projects in your classroom, not only for NCEA and assessment, but also into this competition too. And that actually works alongside with other aspects. If you are a science teacher or have that STEM kind of focus in your lessons rather than pure technology. We've also had many students in the past submit for local science fairs and national science fairs, and they have submitted their entries into the Solve for Tomorrow competition too. So they've had 2 or 3 chances for their projects to actually get somewhere with the different competitions too. And we fully endorse that. Yeah, let's get them out there into these different competitions and showcase their work that they're doing. Another aspect, and I know the focus isn't quite so much on this, is local curriculum currently. However, this is something that is still there for us to be aware of. And through these projects that the students are developing themselves, the connection to local curriculum is huge, because they are having to find that authentic context and see what is going on in their local community to try and help and support those people who are important to them and near them. Thanks, Ruth. So as we mentioned, I know the rubric here is very small. Now, the intention is not for you to be able to read everything on this slide. The intention is just to showcase that we do have different rubrics available to you, which have been created, as we stated, that link directly to the New Zealand curriculum. These rubrics will be available as well on the Samsung Solve for Tomorrow website, because we have a whole website page which is dedicated to resources for you. So as teachers, you can give these rubrics to your students, and you can look at them, and it can help and support you with the learning and the teaching practice that you have. But the other aspect that we have here is what is the other connections to STEM, and some of these obviously we have looked at before, but essentially those authentic contexts are key, and we know that in science and in maths and in technology, that if we can hook into something that's real and authentic, that engagement for learning for your students is much higher, because they can see the purpose of something. Yeah, and it makes something heartwarming. If they can design and make something with real life stakeholders, they feel that they're actually trying to improve the lives of the people around them. And so that's why we have such a strong stakeholder focus in some of those projects that you've seen before. A range of different processes can be followed as well. So it's not just design thinking. When you have a look at some of the rubrics, we are fully aware that within the design thinking process, there may be lots of testing and trialing going on. There may be lots of experimentation going on. And all of these different processes and engineering processes might be going on, and it could be focusing other aspects, whether it's to do with digital technologies or electronics, or so many different fields that we have involved in this competition with so many different processes. But as long as the students can showcase what they've done, how they've done it, and why they've done it, then they can actually earn themselves their points in the criteria for the rubric too. And obviously the why is really important, and that's where it comes to showing to the judges once they've submitted their work the purpose behind this. Why have they developed this project? Is it authentic? Is it purposeful? Is it a case of, or is it not a case of, it can be done, but should it? So we're getting them to really think about what they're doing and why they're doing it, and the impact it will have for people around them. So that's the key connections that we have to STEM. And as you can see, there are some very large connections to the New Zealand curriculum. I'm going to pass on to Ruth, who's going to explore a little bit further about Hagano.
Okay, and just for our viewers who don't speak Te Reo Māori, to explain, because we are targeting and developing resources for Māori medium education, it's important that I explain some of the connections in Te Reo. We will switch back to English though, very shortly. Nō reira, tēnā tātou ngā kaiako o te marautanga o Aotearoa, o te aho matua, huri noa. Ko te mea tuatahi, ko te pūtake me ki o ngā akoranga katoa, koia tō tātou reo. Nō reira, ka tīmatahia tēnei whakataitai ki te reo Māori hoki. He iho one tēnei I tēnei wā ki te whakarite, ki te tuhi I ētahi rauemi hāngai pūana ki te taha reo Māori. Nō reira, ia koutou e whai whakaroana mō ngā mahi hangarau, Ko te pūtake o te mahi hangarau, kia whai whakaro mā wai tēnei hua e hāpai. Mā te kura, mā te whānau, te hapu, te iwi, heoi he ka whai whakaro mā wai. Nō reira, he pēnā ki tā whaia Sarah kōrero, ka kō tui tui ki te reo matatini me te pāngarau, I te mea koia tēnā te tino aronga o te kāwanatanga I tēnei wā. Nō reira, ka hehia hoki au ki te akiaki a koutou ki te tiro I a pūhoro, ki te kore anō koutou ki a tiro I a pūhoro, tirohia. He rōpū tēnā, ka aro ki te pūrau, STEM, me ki. Me ki te STEM, ko te tuatahi, ko te mātauranga Māori. Ka hono hoki a TMoA ki NCA, me ngā marautanga a kura. Nō reira, ka āhei ngā urunga me te mahi rongoa, te mahi māra, te mahi ngā kai, ngā mahi a ngā tūpuna, ka kawea ki ēnei rā. Now, after that summary, I'm going to hand back to Julie.
Thanks, Ruth. So what we've talked about so far has been the what is Samsung Solve for Tomorrow, the why, what are the STEM connections and why you would want to enter it. I'm going to talk a little bit now about the who and the when. So the who is really quite straightforward. We have two categories of the competition, the junior category, which is for years 7 to 10, and then the senior category, which is for years 11 plus. Students can work in groups or they can come and enter the competition as individuals. And they don't necessarily have to be associated with the school. So it's not as though the school has to enter on their behalf and then the students submit. So it could be that home educators or community groups who have students amongst them can enter the competition as well. Next slide, please. This is the when. This is a generic timeline. We have deliberately taken the specific dates for 2025 out of this timeline because you will find those on the Samsung Solve for Tomorrow site, which we will refer to in future slides. So just as a generic timeline, around April, May, the competition will launch. And generally it goes out with a bit of a fanfare. There will be an event in a local school or in a school that will attract the attention of some TVs or some radio media, and then there will be some social media postings and things like that that are out. So look out for that around April, May. You register for entry on the Samsung Solve for Tomorrow website around that time. And in June and July, you get, or your students get the opportunity to submit their project plan to get some early judges' feedback. This is not a compulsory part of the process. You can still enter the competition if you miss this step, but we highly recommend that students do this because it allows the judges to have a quick overview of what they're planning to do and to give them some sort of valuable feedback about, please don't forget to consider X, Y, and Z, or you may like to go and do a bit of research into existing products, or that's sort of feedback that can help your students get them onto the right track to work through a process that results in a really great entry. Then there's a period of time when the students are just beavering away doing their stuff, all their good work and capturing it and recording it. And then the competition will close sometime around late August, early September. The judges then get very busy at the end of September, judging all of the competition entries. And then around October, the awards are announced, and there's a fabulous event at Motat's Te Pua Wānanga Science and Technology Centre where we celebrate the entries and award them all of those wonderful Samsung prizes. Next slide, please. Sarah.
Oh, thank you. So how do we enter? Then, as you can see here, we've got some examples of how students have submitted their entries to the competition. So these are the final entries at the very end. So you can see here they can actually choose. So there's lots of student agency involved in here. They choose how they want to create their presentations. And in the past, we've had lots and lots of different ways that students have presented work. Normally, students actually do a bit of a mixed media approach when presenting some other things. But the key key things is making sure that all the content that's in the rubric obviously is covered in that presentation. But students have submitted written plans and essays, things like that. They could include prototypes, they can include posters, they could include presentations and slideshows, things like that. And we've had quite a few people that actually go away and create video presentations. You have also seen some examples of like science boards as well. So there's many different ways that people submit the work. But like I said, as long as as long as the judges themselves can actually understand what is happening and why things are happening through their process, then we don't mind how it is presented. There are more details on the submission and how to present it. Like, for example, as you can see here, the maximum number of words, the maximum number of slides, because we do need to have things as concise as possible, because when it does get to judging, we usually have quite a lot of entries to go through, so it takes a little bit of time. So we just want to make sure that obviously we give everybody a fair amount of time to be able to actually judge it fairly. You can, as Ruth has just popped into the chat as well, we have got the link here to the website itself. Please keep an eye on this website. The website details currently have information on there from last year's competition, because the launch isn't until in a couple of months' time. But keep an eye on that site, because there are still resources which are going to be very helpful to help and support with learning. And there's also connections to previous webinars and things like that to help and support you just to get the ball rolling should you wish. These will be being updated as the year progresses. So key points really for entries, please register early, because then obviously you know what you're doing, you can get your planning ahead and you can get stuck into those projects, and also lets us know to actually try and see if we need to get like any more judges, because sometimes we never know how many entries we're going to get, so we need to be on the ball with this to try and get some really great science and STEM teachers on here to judge for the competition itself. As Julie mentioned, there is the opportunity to pop in a submission of a project plan earlier on in the competition, and we give, usually that's 1 or 2 A4 pages potentially, just doing a brief outline of what the project is, who it's going to be supporting, and what the intention of that project is. So it's an introductory plan essentially, and so we can obviously give some help and give some support for the rest of the project as it continues on. I'll come to the resources and rubrics in a second, but the other thing is obviously we know in technology that planning time is very important. In fact, it's still there in the curriculum, the Plan for Practice strand, and also we've also got lots of webinars, and I'll talk to these a little bit more as well. On the next slide, we have got, and we will be sharing these slides with you, we have got key links to different resources that have been created in the past for you to be able to use as reference for yourselves as teachers, or in the classroom itself. So in here there are different links. Obviously you can see to the design thinking process itself. Each one of those underlined sections can take you to a different resource. So like I said, we will share the bit.ly for these slides at the end, and the resource link on the other side there will take you to the resource page on the Samsung Solve for Tomorrow competition too. And I'll just pass on to the next slide, which I think is our question slide. So that is our brief overview of the Samsung Solve for Tomorrow competition. And what we do now is we would like to invite you to obviously pop some questions if you have any in the Q&A. Whilst the questions are going in, if Ruth, can you just pop to the next slide for me really quickly, just so that, oh, sorry, the next one. Thank you. Like I said before, just mentioning that you can have access to these slides if you want to use them as a reference tool or to share them with other educators in your schools or communities. So you can see we have a bit.ly link at the top, which will actually give you access to this particular slideshow, or you can scan the QR code just there if you want to. I'm hoping that someone on the team will be able to just copy and paste that link into the chat for me. I know Ruth's onto this kind of thing. And be aware, not only do we have physical resources available for you for the Solve for Tomorrow competition, every year we also record and release usually about 6 or 7 webinars, I think it is, Julie, where we go through the design process and we've broken it down. And you will find that all of those webinars from last year are still on the Samsung Solve for Tomorrow competition website, and they are also on the TENS YouTube channel. So you can go and have a look at those. Be aware, though, those webinars will be being re-recorded because there have been some changes to the scoring rubric this year. And so we are changing some of the bits and pieces on there, but it won't change dramatically. Let's put it that way. So the main content in those videos are still there for you to have a look at if you want to explore that further in the next couple of months before the competition launches itself. This webinar itself, and I know Pip will probably do this too, is being recorded and will be on the TENS YouTube channel as well. Questions, I think, is now time.
Actually, I have a question. I'm just wondering if a teacher came across this webinar in, say, the July school holidays. I'm just thinking how short a time frame can students engage in a project like this? When would it be too late to start, do you think?
Will I do that?
Yeah.
There is no official cut-off date other than the entry closing date. So you have a superhuman student/teacher team out there that's able to get their act together and whip through a super fast design thinking process and, you know, provide a really good presentation of the rich process that they've engaged in. And then we're all on board with that.
Awesome.
Can I also add to that as well, is that we've had some amazing entries in the past which haven't been very long and detailed, and they've actually, the design and the thinking behind the things that they've been designing and creating has been very simple. So the projects don't have to be very techy, let's put it that way. They can be. We've had some awesome entries. There was a young man who made a it was a toy at night time to help their sibling, wasn't it, Julie, I think?
Yeah, it was called, I can't remember the name of it now, but it was basically a Velcro wristband that a teddy attached to that allowed the child to sort of keep the teddy beside them at night, which sounds really very simple. And it was a simple thing, but what was so great about it was the process he had gone through around creating prototypes and testing them and then reiterating his design and documenting all of that for us to see. So it was a really great example of a simple homegrown problem that had a very elegant design process attached to it.
Yeah.
Awesome. I often hear from teachers who say they have problems getting their students to gather stakeholder feedback, and often it's because there's not the authentic context, right? And if you've got these authentic contexts, that stakeholder engagement can be huge. And I was looking at your the assessment rubrics for the seniors, and can definitely see those links for MPT, particularly the new assessments in 1.1, 1.2. Really easy. I'm like really excited that that's there for teachers to be able to see that link and hopefully look at a great way to engage in the classroom their students, especially that stakeholder feedback, authentic context. Makes sense. It's awesome.
Yeah, and if you need the other hook for your teenage students as well to engage them into something, so well, here we go. At the end of this project, if it's really great, we can actually push it into this competition and you could win this. Another alternative extrinsic motivator, but at least it's something else.
Awesome.
I'm going to just add there and say, you know, that's part of the reason why I got excited about this competition. And as a teacher, I always encouraged my students to find that purpose for what they were doing. And yeah, competition is fun.
Yes.
Great. Well, we've got no other questions in the chat. Are we happy to gather some feedback now?
Oh, yes, I will stop sharing.
Thank you. Anyone is welcome to ask any further questions. Oh, have I got the right screen? Yep. There's a QR code there that you can scan or go to the link to give us feedback on our webinars and also to give ideas for webinars. That would be awesome to hear from you. So please give us that feedback. Give you a moment to do that. Any final words, ladies? It was amazing. I'm excited about this.
I would just encourage every technology teacher out there to really consider this seriously and see if they can encourage their students into it, because it's a wonderful opportunity for some really authentic practice, if you like, for the students to work through, and just wonderful prizes at the end of it if they're one of the lucky winners.
Beautiful. Our next Wednesday webinar will be the Pohatu Penguins project, designing the virtual and Minecraft world. A really exciting project that TEN's got involved with. So please sign up. We will send information out via our newsletter and social media soon. That's on the 26th of February. Ruth, do you want to close us up with the karakia since you opened?
Okay. I'm also a fan of hui going shorter than it should. So ka pai me karakia tātou, kia mātou katoa, kua mutu mātou ia mātou mahi, ia mātou kaupapa hoki. Arahina mātou, kia kawe mātou ia mātou haipapa, kia whakatapua mātou ki ngā kaupapa me ngā mea e whakapono. Manakitea mai mātou.
Kia ora, everyone.